Spells of Magic is a game created way back in 2010 as an idea, and projecting to be a reality by 2022. Kicking its way into the trading card game industry, this game offers unique elements on some already familiar gameplay style. Let's jump right into it. To start a game of Spells of Magic with your opponent, you must first decide who is going first. You can do this in multiple different ways. A game of rock, paper, scissors, or perhaps rolling a dice to see who gets a bigger number, or an even or odd number. Once you have determined who will be taking their turn first, both players must shuffle each other's Magic and Soul deck. To explain what these are, the Magic deck is the one you will be drawing your Magic cards with. A limit of 30 cards minimum and maximum will be allowed in the Magic deck. The Soul deck, on the other hand, is a deck casted to the side of your field which holds all your creatures. A limit of 0 cards minimum and 15 cards maximum in the Soul deck permitted. A Magic deck can consist of 3 different types of cards: White Magics, Black Magics, and Alchemies. White Magics are cards that can only be played on your turn. There is absolutely no cost to playing these cards. Black Magic cards. These cards can be played on your opponent's turn. Granted, they are responding to an opponent's action, such as switching phases, responding to a card or effect, and these also cost 2 blood to cast. Alchemy Magic. These cards can only be played on your turn, which also costs 2 blood and require 1 creature to be sacrificed in order to play an alchemy card. Currently, alchemy cards cannot be countered. You can only use 1 copy of an alchemy card per duel. So, for example, you can only use Transmutation Circle Greed once per duel. Even if you were to shuffle that card from your graveyard to your Magic deck, it cannot be reactivated if it already resolved. The Soul deck currently holds 9 attributes for creatures: Light, Darkness, Fire, Water, Earth, Wind, Sound, Soul, and Sand. These are some rules that must be discussed before proceeding with the game. Each player has 30 blood, where blood is life, and each player starts off by drawing 3 cards. The player who starts does not draw on their very first turn. A player may have no more than 5 cards in their hand at the end of the turn. If a player happens to have more than 5 cards in their hand at the end of their turn, they must send cards from their hand to the graveyard until they only have 5 cards left in their hand. The overall objective of this game is to either get your opponent to 0 blood, or to have your opponent be unable to draw any more cards from their Magic deck. These are the only 2 win conditions. So if your opponent decks out, you win, or if you reduce your opponent's blood to 0, you win as well. If a player uses a card such as a Black Magic, White Magic, or an Alchemy Magic card, after attempt of activation of the card, despite if the card was negated or not, it is then sent to the graveyard automatically, otherwise specified. If a creature is destroyed as a result of battle or card effect, it is also sent to the graveyard, otherwise specified. What exactly is the graveyard? The graveyard holds cards that you would have already used, or creatures that you controlled that are now destroyed or sacrificed. These are the phases in Spells of Magic. Unburn, Draw Phase, Main Phase 1, Battle Phase, Main Phase 2, and End Phase. Unburn, Draw Phase. This is where you unburn your creatures, and you draw a card. This happens all at the same time. Main Phase 1. You have priority to play cards or resolve effects. By cards, I mean White Magics, Black Magics, or Alchemy cards. Battle Phase. You may declare attacks with your creatures. Just as a side note here, Black Magic spells come in handy on the Battle Phase. Main Phase 2. Similar to Main Phase 1, you are able to play White Magic, Black Magic, and Alchemy cards, or resolve effects. End Phase. This is the end of your turn. Now it will be your opponent's turn, where the cycle restarts except for them. Let's talk a bit about game mechanics and what abilities cards can have. Reanimate, Exile, Rush, Freeze, Clone, Burn, Unburned, Flying, Linger, Equip, Stealth, Haunt, Immortal, and Protection. Reanimate. Pay 2 blood and summon the creature from the graveyard with Reanimate. When the creature leaves the field in any way, exile it instead of sending it to the graveyard. Exile. Place target in the exile zone. Freeze. Place a freeze counter on target creature. That creature's effects and abilities are negated as long as it has a freeze counter on it. The creature cannot attack or defend or be sacrificed, but it can be targeted. During the end phase of the next turn, remove the freeze counter. When the freeze counter is removed, resolve any effect or ability that was negated while it had the counter on it. Clone. Create a copy of targeted creature. This does not count as it entering the field. Burn. Turn the creature sideways, horizontally. Burned creatures cannot attack or defend. Unburned. Turn the creature back to normal, vertically. It can now attack or defend. You will frequently burn and unburn on your unburn draw phase. Flying. Flying creatures can attack directly if the player chooses. If the player with flying attacks, and the opposing player controls a flying creature, the player must select the flying creature or a non-flying creature before it can attack directly. If a flying creature is burned, it loses flying until it's unburned. Linger. Cards with the ability Linger stay on the field until a card or effect states otherwise. Equip. Cards with Equip must target a creature on activation. The Equip card becomes a part of the targeted creature. Stealth. Cards with Stealth cannot be targeted by your opponent's card effects. Haunt. Cards with Haunt target one card on the field and negate that card's abilities and effects as long as the creature haunting is on the field. Immortal. Cannot be destroyed by attacks or card effects. Protection. Protected from any damage from battle and or card effect. Let's talk about the battle phase. In order to battle, you must first be in your battle phase. You cannot attack your opponent directly unless their side of the field has no creatures, unless a card specifies otherwise. If your creature attacks into a burned creature, you will deal the damage to the creature, as it will deal no damage back to yours, because simply their creature is burned during combat. However, if your creature attacks into an unburned creature, both creatures will exchange attacks, each dealing their respective damage to their respective defense. If your creature attacks your opponent directly, whatever their attack is applied onto their blood. So let's use an example. Opponent A controls Zephos, unburned, as Opponent B controls Taifu, unburned. Opponent A declares Zephos to attack into Opponent B's Taifu. The attack is not responded to, and we proceed to move to the damage step. Within the damage step, Taifu takes 6 damage from Zephos. Zephos takes 4 damage from Taifu. Taifu dies and is sent to the graveyard, and Zephos dies and is sent to the graveyard. This all happens at the same time. With all this knowledge in mind, this is just the general basics of Spells and Magic, and we thank you kindly for contributing your time into our project. Stay tuned, as there is a long road ahead of us. Thanks for your time.